because you just said something too profound that the fact that you fit doesn't necessarily mean you should be part.
Yes, absolutely the truth.
So you see, you just concluded everything that that I think each and every artist should understand, because we will be complaining about this and that, only to realize you were in a wrong place, or you were in at the right time,
Yes.
or the time was correct, but one way or the other. So the minute you establish a relationship with people that would understand you, and it becomes reciprocated, it develops you even further.
I think it's very
You were born into music. That's how I should naturally put it. And you went to school.
Yeah, I went to school. I sang in choirs all through my primary school period. It was a very specific kind of choir music. You know, I went to a very Afrikaans school. And then at high school, I had a very different experience. I went to a very small private school because my father got a job as an English teacher there.
Okay.
So it was a very small private school in Magoebaskloof. And the only reason I could go there is because my dad
Works there.
And my mom worked there. So it was very good because we got very good deals on education. So I feel very privileged in that way. But it's because my parents are teachers. I've actually talked to this about this with a few of my friends, and I think it would be such fun to do opera.
It will be
totally in drag.
It will be. In fact, it will. It's natural. It will be breaking the barriers, and it will be also exposing things that we don't want to talk about. Because you find that nobody can wake up and say, "I want to be hated," so therefore I'm homosexual.
No.
I want to be hated. Nobody can.
Well, look, and part of it was the person I was involved with, I was married to, was a part-time musician, professionally an engineer, brilliant pianist. So, but there was also different ways of navigating being a professional versus being a
Hobby.
he was a hobbyist, but he was good enough to have been a professional. But I wanted to be a professional. And therein lay the problem, because I think the demand, I don't think people who are not in the arts industry realize the demands that being a professional artist of any kind have on you as a person and on your time. You have to be committed 100%. You cannot just be with your partner all the time. There are sometimes you're just not going to be with family. You can miss birthdays, you miss weddings, you miss funerals, not because you want to, but because that's your job.
Welcome to another exciting episode of Re-Engineering Choral Space. We always try to bring guests that will assist us in re-engineering the space, because obviously there is a gap that is done by us knowingly or unknowingly. My name is Masas Klaso, and I'm better known as M6. Today is no exception. I brought you an exciting person, beautiful baritone singer, a good friend of mine, and I don't even want to introduce him myself. I want him to introduce himself, just in case I short circuit him and say, this is that, and then I omit one thing. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you, Zim. I'm very, very honored to be here. I'm having a wonderful time already. Just to introduce myself briefly, I'm Chris Vale. I'm a baritone professionally. I am also a vocal coach, singing teacher, and I am also a choral practitioner, as well as a choral organizer.
Wow, that's lovely. That's lovely. I think now that you are saying that you are a vocal coach, probably by the time end of this year, I'll be able to sing too instead of talking. That's what I would want to do.
Well, come for a lesson or two.
I'll do that. I'll keep you on that. Chris, where did it all start? Let's start there.
Well, where it all started for me was when I was a child. My parents both singers. They both sang in choir. So everyone who's ever had an interview with me has heard the story. I I remember doing an interview on SAFM. Oh, no, it was a morning show, morning live,
Morning live, yeah.
years ago, and I told this story, and it goes like this: my mother was pregnant with me, and they were at a choir rehearsal, and the conductor asked all the choristers to bend over to stretch, and he said, "Not you, Rena, don't bend over."
You can't.
And she's very defiant. My mother is like that. She's quite a defiant person if she
Okay.
feels she's being wronged. So she bent over. And then, of course, she went into labor that night. And the next day I was born. And next week after that, I was in the choir rehearsal in my carry cart. And I was very quiet. So I've been listening to choir music and harmonic, the sort of Western harmonic language for years. And it's not just Western music, it's also African music because my father was very close to a few very key conductors in the Petersburg area,
Okay.
now Pulukwani. And one of his great friends of that time was Matlakala Bopape, who's still involved with the Petersburg Choral Society.
All right.
And my parents sang in the Petersburg Stadskoor, or the Petersburg Civic Choir.
All right.
And yeah, that's where I kind of developed this love for classical music and for choral music. It was wonderful.
That's nice. You know, in Xhosa they would say, "Uyincance ebeleni." It was breastfed to you. It's not the case. You were born with it. Anyway, all right. We can talk about everything, you know, Chris. From race, from from success, your colorful gang, whatever it is. But oh, you didn't do that.
Yeah, I did. I did that.
Okay, no, okay. Let's stick to music.
I stick to music. I think it's very
You
important.
you you did you were born into music. That's how I should naturally put it. And you went to school.
Yeah, I went to school. I sang in choirs all through my primary school period. It was a very specific kind of choir music. You know, I went to a very Afrikaans school. And then at high school, I had a very different experience. I went to a very small private school because my father got a job as an English teacher there.
Okay.
So it was a very small private school in Mahubaskloof. And the only reason I could go there is because my dad
Works there.
worked there. And my mom worked there. So it was very good because we got very good deals on education. So I feel very privileged in that way. But it's because my parents are teachers. I mean, I think this country really would be nowhere without its teachers. So I think that's important too. A part of my life is education. So then I sang in a choir for a very short period. My dad actually conducted it. And then I stopped doing choral music because the choir kind of ran dry. It didn't quite. A conductor is a very important aspect of a choir. Without the right conductor, a choir can die.
True.
And it has many factors. But one of the most important factors is a real passion for choral music. Without that passion and without that passion coming through to the people you're conducting, there's nothing. And those people are not as many as we'd like to think. There are many of them, but not as many as there should be. So I think for me, then from there, it became more of a musical, a different musical approach. I started playing piano because at that stage my voice changed, and then after high school, I sang all through high school, and then after high school, I went to university for BMAS.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I did my BMAS degree, and then I got married. And that wasn't a good idea. But you know, it was what it was.
Okay.
I'm not going to talk about that.
Like I said, there's so
Yo.
many things that we can talk
We
about.
can talk about so
but
many
I'm
times.
like, let's choose music. I love that. It was just a pass by. It was just a pass
Well,
by.
look, and part of it was the person I was involved with, I was married to, was a part-time musician,
Okay.
professionally an engineer, brilliant pianist. It just, didn't work out between us.
Okay.
So, but there was also different ways of navigating being a professional versus being a
Hobby.
a hobbyist. He was a hobbyist. but he was good enough to have been a professional. But I wanted to be a professional. And therein lay the problem, because I think the demand, I don't think people who are not in the arts industry realize the demands that being a professional artist of any kind have on you as a person and on your time. You have to be committed 100%. You cannot just be with your partner all the time. There are sometimes you're just not going to be with family. You can miss birthdays, you miss weddings, you miss funerals, not because you want to, but because that's your job. And I mean, Christmas. A lot of times you're singing on Christmas. I mean, not so
Somebody's
bad here.
expecting
It was exactly,
Christmas Carol somewhere.
exactly. And the festive season is quite frankly, in this country, quite interesting. They put the Christmas concerts earlier in December, so that artists can actually have a holiday
And
on
be
the
at home.
actually on the days. But in America, that doesn't happen. They don't care. It's not the same. They have different priorities, and
In,
it's all about the work.
in fact, you just mentioned something very interesting about professional music and the family life. But now I want to just maybe divert a bit and speak about professional music, because and I'm gonna drop in race into it.
Yes.
Just by the way.
Yes.
Because unfortunately, I'm not gonna. I don't see color in you, but I'm seeing a color. I'm gonna, because there would be an understanding that you are. I believe you are successful. I believe you are successful as a musician, as a music practitioner, because you are working, you are putting an effort into it. But now, when I'm saying professionalizing it and putting a race into it, do you think you are doing well because of the color of your skin, or you are doing well because you're doing you put an effort?
I think that it really depends from case to case, but for me, I'm doing well because I work hard at it. Because if I were successful just because I were light skinned, white, I would have been successful 10 years ago. you know, so you know this job is never and can never be about just the color of your skin. I think there is some gatekeeping here and there, but it's a lot less than it used to be. It is very difficult for anyone in any arts environment to do well if they are not talented enough, if they don't have the work behind it. Because you can also be very talented and not make it.
True.
So it really has to do with how well you are able to work, how well you are able to market yourself, because quite frankly, the most important thing in any arts job at the moment is marketing. It has very little to do with, in my opinion, and in my experience, I have less issues. I don't know. Sometimes I have less success in certain circles because I'm white, or more, depending on other circles. It really depends. But I think the baseline for any artist is hard work.
Hard work. And you mentioned something about teachers. I think it's the part that I would have a that people would think we always underestimate the power of education. We always want to put talent in the forefront and not capacitate it and supplement it with some education. So your indication of the of education in the space.
I think there are people who really want to work, who really want to be in the industry, who a lot of people might say, oh, but they don't have the talent. And then they end up being more powerful, more brilliant performers because they educate themselves. True. Or they are educated in a specific way. I think you cannot underestimate the value of education. But I do think that while a formal education is a good thing, I think that each person needs to be told from when they're young, we will help you educate you as your parents, as your educators, as your elders. But it's your responsibility to educate yourself as well. So you can't just have it given to you. More than anything else, when I went to university, I had a very, very good education, but not in music. because of my background. My father was interested in classical music. Not everyone's father is interested in classical music. My father was very interested in classical music. And so I got a lot of education and a lot of listening education. For a musician, listening is more important than anything else. You can have a mediocre voice, but if you listen well, you can train yourself to sing better. There are people who have done it successfully. And I think also, but when I got to university, this is the point that I was trying to get to. When I got to university, I was ahead of some of my peers because I'd also done work on my own. But 4 years later, and 10 year for the 10 years that I was in my relationship, I didn't do as much work. I didn't do as much research. I didn't read as much, and I fell behind. I've had to in the last 5 years really catch up, really re-educate myself because there's so much more to it that you only get with practical experience. And I think it's very important to not only educate young people, but for established musicians to keep educating themselves.
True.
And you can educate yourself through any means, but I think the most valuable way is experience and experience with other artists. Collaborations.
Working together.
Absolutely.
Being a team.
Mm.
Because with team, it's together everyone achieves more. But when you're an individual, and what you just said, you just indicated to us that many receive the advice, only the wise will benefit from it.
Yeah.
Because what happens is like, if I feel like I'm good at this, I assume that everybody must understand and must listen to me.
Oh, yeah.
And that is not how it's supposed to be. Mm-hmm. You cannot live long enough to understand everything. That's why people have 2 ears and 1 mouth. You listen more and you talk less.
My grandfather used to say that. He says, you have 2 ears, 2 eyes, and 1 mouth. Look, listen, then speak. And it's just the best advice anyone can get. That also indicates to me about education. Before you create, you need to put in. You need to process. You need to hear. You need to listen. You need to listen carefully. You need to watch carefully. Because being on stage, and this is something I've struggled with tremendously, I have a weird manner on stage, and something I'm working on. You have to watch what others do. You have to watch the way you do, and then find a way of finding a way that's you, uniquely you, but that integrates that and allows you to project how you feel and how you want to be seen on stage.
Without outshining others.
Without
undermining others,
yes.
But being part of them.
I think this is also the thing. Whatever you're part of collaboratively, if you are with people who value you, if you're working with people who value you, if you're working with people who value your opinion and your status, you will have time and space to shine, and then you will also be able to allow others to do the same.
Is this the part that I close the conversation? Because you just said something too profound that the fact that you fit doesn't necessarily mean you should be part.
Yes, absolutely the truth.
So you see, you just concluded everything that I think each and every artist should understand, because we will be complaining about this and this and that, only to realize you were in a wrong place, or you were in at the right time,
yes.
Or the time was correct, but one way or the other. So the minute you establish a relationship with people that would understand you, and it becomes reciprocated, it develops you even further.
Absolutely.
And it educates you. It makes you a better person.
Absolutely, it makes you a better person. I think that every experience, and I think I beg your pardon, we have this conception that that a bad experience is just a bad experience. Obviously there are certain things that are not pleasant and just didn't work, but learn from that. Don't waste an opportunity to learn from something like that. If an experience was unpleasant on one level or another, learn from it. Learn what you did that you shouldn't do again. And learn what other people do to know what you shouldn't do.
Because we
again.
can't live long enough to do everything ourselves.
No. And there's no way in which you can be perfect all the time.
And correct.
Again, it's that thing of perfection is an illusion. You know, you can look perfect and seem perfect,
Until
but
you're home
underneath,
alone. Until you're home alone.
until you're home alone,
And reality
or
hits.
just I don't know, got off stage and go into the dressing room and you're like, oh my god, this outfit is poking me in the ribs, and everyone else is like, you looked so beautiful, you sounded great, and you're like, I'm so uncomfortable all the time in this outfit, you know, things like that. It's the truth. But this is, I have a real passion for drag performance. Now I wanted to do it myself, but it's one of the things I still have to do in my life. But I think being a drag artist is the very essence of what being a performance is about. You are doing something that is very brave.
True.
You're exposing your true self because people think that you're hiding behind a persona. No, that's who you really are. The real person comes out, or a different side of that person comes out when you put the drag on. And you have to be able to, you have to expose yourself so deeply to
Can I
make
be part of
yourself
the
a clown. Because
Can-
what the drag artists are comedians.
Naturally, that's what people think. Can I
The
be part of
tragedy and the
production?
comedy.
Can I be part of the production?
I'd love to be, exactly. I would love to be in something like that. I've actually talked to this about this with a few of my friends, and I think it would be such fun to do an opera
It will be.
totally in drag.
It will be. It will. In fact, it will. It's natural. It will be breaking the barriers, and it will be also exposing things that we don't want to talk about.
Yes.
Because you find that nobody can wake up and say, "I want to be hated," so therefore I'm homosexual.
No.
I want to be hated. Nobody can wake up and do that. But this is you. And
Yeah.
then you have to keep quiet because you are scared of being hated. You are scared of whatever that is going to be said that is bad to you. So that is a nice one. I think, and it needs to be explored. And in the process, it's enlightening. And it's liberating while at it, because there are so many people that are talented and they end up not doing what they're able to do because we want to label them,
Yes.
and we forget the talent aspect or every other thing. We just want to label you with a connotation that is bad, because being colorful can't be such a bad thing after all.
No, I think I actually read this or watched a video of someone actually analyzing where artists lie within society. We're always on the edges. We're always on the fringes of society. If you're an artist who doesn't venture towards the edge of their capability or the edge of what's acceptable, then you're not doing your job. Because that's where we are. We're always pushing the boundaries. Because we are the way into enlightenment. Because I think that's how I feel about art. I feel art is enlightenment. It forces you to see things differently.
It's colorful.
Yeah, it's colorful. It forces you to see things through a different lens.
Yes.
And it's like watching. There's this incredible film that they did in the 1930s, where a character was made up with specific kind of makeup, specific colors, and they changed the light on the character's face, and they went from looking very innocent to looking completely deranged and demented, just by changing the light. And it's got nothing to do with the shadows on the face; it's got to do with the makeup, because they understood how certain colors are perceived by a black and white lens. And just by changing the color of the light, they were able to completely change the way you saw that character within an instant. I mean, that's a very basic example. It's a very example from film history almost 100 years ago now. But the point for me is, if they hadn't experimented with it, if we hadn't worked with scientists, if we hadn't worked with technical people or with other artists, that kind of thing would never have happened. And then we wouldn't have any of the filmmaking that we have at the moment, which is beyond their imaginations completely. So I'm also interested in film, if you,
Oh, that's
in
nice.
case you were wondering.
Actually, okay, then, okay, you just brought us back to say, Chris, I understand that you're a professional musician.
Mm.
What do you do? You told me that you are teaching. You told us that you're teaching. You and I understand you teach at school, and also
Yes.
you obviously do the private lessons. You wouldn't
Yes.
invite me to come and take lessons.
I wouldn't
And
do
I'm
that
gonna,
if I could.
and I'm gonna take you up on that offer.
Okay.
I'm gonna do that. So what else do you do? And what have you been involved in? I know you involved with Vox.
Yes.
That's how we met.
We met at a Vox Chamber Choir Christmas concert 2 years ago. And was it 2 years or 3 years ago? 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
2 years ago. So, yes, that was an incredible thing to be part of. Vox Chamber Choir is a very dynamic, very focused, professional choir in South Africa. And we are involved with many, many different projects. Franco Prinsloo is the conductor, but he also composes all the music that Vox Chamber Choir sings. And what's important to know about that is that that doesn't often happen. There are a few composers who have their own choirs, like Eric Whittaker in America, one or two others. But Vox Chamber Choir is a very unique thing and a uniquely South African thing because Franco has a uniquely South African perspective.
Okay.
You know, so he writes. We just finished a very big project called Kroon van Wonders. Kroon van Wonders is the last oratorio in a trilogy of oratorios. And our oratorio is like a, I don't know, how do you say this? An oratorio is like an opera, but it's usually sacred themes. This one is about the life of Jesus.
Okay.
And then, so basically, the choir sang with a full professional orchestra, and basically, in Afrikaans, actually told the story from beginning to end. It's the first time something like this has been done successfully in South African history.
Okay.
So it was Kruis van Liefde is the first one that he wrote, but it falls in the middle because it's about the crucifixion. And then he wrote Lig van Waarheid, which is about Christmas, the birth of Christ. And then the last one he wrote to complete the three is Kroon van Wonders. It was a very big project, one of the most beautiful things I've ever sung. It is very meditative, it's very spiritually enlightening, it's uplifting. And then we also do a lot of other brilliant concerts that are usually based on a theme. Vox Chamber Choir also won a summer award last year.
Nice.
Yeah. And we won.
Boo, boo,
You know, that whole thing.
Yeah.
We won an ITSA award. We won some Afro Indie awards. So that's really good. And we're working on another album coming up soon called Breathe, which is basically, if you look at the album art, it is a fermata, which is a pause signal in
Actually,
music.
when you said breathe, I took a deep breath.
Yes.
And interestingly, whenever somebody asks me, "How are you?" my response will be, "I'm breathing."
I'm breathing. Exactly.
If it's through the wound, the lungs, or the pipe, is
Yes.
secondary. Primarily, I'm breathing. And I think that's what we need to do. In fact, I think after COVID, we really need to breathe.
We need to breathe.
I'm interested in the album. You just mentioned that the choir is a professional choir.
Yes.
Now, I don't want to define professional for you, but I'll just ask a couple of things. Are you contracted with the choir? Do you get paid by the choir?
Yes.
Do you go for auditions? How do you measure your professionalism?
The professionalism of the choir is measured by the fact that it's an auditioned choir.
Okay.
Every member of the choir. It's not a community choir. It's community choirs also audition. Well, I think we are contracted to perform. So when you join Vox Chamber Choir, you have to sign a contract, and we do get paid. It's not a monthly salary, but we get paid per
Performance.
gig, per performance. So yeah, it is a professional choir, but it's also a professional choir in that we operate on a level where we can be asked to sing a performance in 2 weeks and do it.
Nice.
You know, so yeah.
You work hard.
Very
It's an intense space.
well. When you work in Fox Chamber Choir, you cannot just arrive at the rehearsal and expect Franco to teach you the music.
Oh,
No,
okay.
he makes sure you get the sheet music beforehand. You have to work on the sheet music on your own. You have to be able to sight read because he may sometimes just give you a piece at the rehearsal and then you sing through it. What Franco does is he works on the overall artistic intent of a piece. He work on detail like phrasing, dynamics, intention behind the text. Always that. So we work very fast. I mean, this Krun for Vonish we've learned in 3 months.
Okay. W- b- by going for auditions in Vogue,
Yeah.
does it mean you must be a student or music qualified? As long
You-
as you can read music. And
If you
that's
can
that.
read music and you have a good ear and you have the right the the approach to commitment, there has to be a commitment. Vox Chamber Choir is the kind of choir that takes a lot of time, and there are many of those. Acustica also does that. They are very committed people and they deliver work on a very high standard. Um, and some other choirs I can't name right now. Chamber Singers is a project based choir. They also work on a very high level, and a Quaver vocal group, which is conducted by
Yeah.
Sabelo Mtembu,
Yeah.
who's one of the bass conductors I've ever met in my life. Wonderful
And
man,
yeah, I
and an
remember Quiver.
exceptional choir, and that they work also on a very high level.
Yeah.
Veni Cantare, conducted by Cesare Mundlane. I really enjoy their work. So this all brings me to the community, and one of the things we're trying to do as now, besides Vox, well, in Vox we have what we call our festivals. We have a Mother's Day festival where we invite other choirs and then we all perform together at an event. This year it was, incidentally, Quaver and Veni.
Okay.
Last year it was there was a high school choir involved. It was Hoërskool Melu Park. It was the UJ choir with while Renette Bauer was still conducting. Now they're conducted by Sizwe. So that was quite an interesting experience, and it's always a very interesting experience to do the Mother's Day concert every year because there's so much interaction.
I can imagine.
And then later in the year, we always do the spring concert. This year, that is being dedicated to Afrikaans Eenhonderd because this is the 100th year of Afrikaans being an official language.
Oh, nice.
Yes. I'm looking forward to many more official language years, which they are coming up,
Yeah,
so
I know.
it's going to be wonderful. And what I find interesting about this is that it's going to be about poetry,
Oh,
Afrikaans poetry, Afrikaans art song, and Afrikaans choral music. And that's going to be at the ZK Matthews Great Hall.
Great Hall
at
at Unisa.
Unisa.
Okay.
And then, that's Vox Chamber Choir is very busy. So that's why I say we're a professional choir because we work very hard and we have a lot of very specific programs and the level of requirement to get in is quite high. You have to be able to sight read well. You have to be a good vocalist. You have to have a good vocal tone. That does not mean that you have to have a BMAS degree. That does not mean that you have to have worked in the industry. That just means you have to be an accomplished vocalist, an accomplished choral vocalist. Because there are also accomplished opera singers who audition for Vox who don't get in because it's not an opera chorus.
When we think
There's
that
a very different approach to choral music in terms of the style of choral music that Franco writes in and opera. Very different.
now you are confusing me. You know, when we see opera people, we think that hey, they are the hottest thing next to equator, and then you're saying now they can even fail your thing.
Because opera, the point of opera and the point of choral music are two different things. Opera is about your sound reaching. I sing opera. I'm actually singing at an opera concert this weekend. Opera is about throwing your sound as far away from you as possible without damaging your voice and creating a big full sound to fill a hall of 1,000 seats. That's what it's about. And singing over an orchestra. So you're going for a tone that is able to be heard even when you're singing very soft. Now, with choral music, we do a similar thing, but because there's so many voices all together, we want those sounds to blend together. So you have to allow your sound to be freer and softer. You're not going to sing quite as loud as an opera singer.
You just naturally said artists must not undermine each other.
No.
They must work together, because we just mentioned that we are having art that is you're gonna have your poetry, you're gonna have within the art, so the collaboration is critical, and then whatever that we do musically must not make the painter feel bad, or the poetry. You just indicated
Yeah.
that we all need each other. It's like a hand, and then you close it, it's a fist, and it's more powerful.
Absolutely. When you work on a piece of music or on a work of art, you always have to take into consideration what the art is and what your contribution to it is. Right? So you can never go, this piece of art, I'm going to do it like this because this is how I would do it. Yes, you have to put your own spin on it. You have to put your own interpretation in, but you can never do it at the expense of the art. Meaning, you cannot make the art worse by doing it your way.
Actually, that's why
You have to improve it by doing your way.
that's why we're even having this conversation,
Yes.
because we're trying to re-engineer the choral space to
Yes.
say what is it that we need to do in order for us to be more successful.
Yes.
And then success is measured in different ways, but for me um, it's more like it has always been passion driven, and now every day we realize that people are making it a source of income. So how do we make it financially viable?
That is a very, very tough question. You make it financially viable, I think, through many means. I think you have to have a knack, and you have to collaborate with people who know how to market. Marketing is very important. You also have to know when to market. You must do your research, because if you are marketing something in the same time as something else big, then you're kind of competing against yourself. And when I say competing against yourself, is you don't want to really compete too much with other choirs. You don't want them to be worse off than you. Um, but I think definitely there's so much scope in it, and I think once you understand how your audience works, because this is the thing, identifying your audience. Who's going to listen to you, your choir? And I think that's what Quaver has done. That's what Veni has done. That's what Vox has done. Acoustica as well. Acoustica has really done that. They know their audience, and that's admirable.
And even developed their audience
They
to
have
say,
developed, they've broadened their audience because they do collaborations with pop artists or artists in a more popular genre, like Natalia, for example, or Amanda Strijdom. So they know who their audience is. Vox Chamber Choir knows, we know who our audience is, because the way we produce our music is very much, it's a unique experience, because from start to finish, because we perform music that is newly written
I can imagine.
by
It
the,
should be
and it's
exciting.
conducted by the person who wrote the music. That's fascinating. It's a
should be
fascinating experience.
It should be exciting, because we want to repeat, and then you get bored, and then you lose your audience
You could
naturally.
lose, but I think also if your audience likes you, they will still be loyal. But you have to also work for that loyalty. You can't
Yes,
take it for granted.
For granted, yeah, true.
I think one of the ways in which the choral space is being expanded is by creating a more diverse landscape and a bigger audience with young people. And that's what we're doing. I'm also involved with the Legato Choral Festival and Awards. And that's important for me because what we want to do is, it started small, it started in Pretoria. We've now, this year, It's expanded tremendously. We've next this year we were also involved in the Western Cape. There's a version.
Okay,
There's a part
okay,
of the Western Cape. But my main thing for next year is going to be uh, expanding it so that choirs in the Greater Johannesburg area have more access to it.
okay.
And there are big plans in the pipeline. We would like to bring Legato to Joburg.
You
A
said
lot of
legato, ne?
Joburg choirs actually come to Legato Pretoria, but we feel that's unfair because there's lots of choirs in Joburg and surrounds who can't rent a bus. It's an expense, a huge expense, or that it's not in their budget that year. And so if it's more accessible in a theatrical space. Now, the whole concept behind Legato is to bring choral music to a theatrical space, to a theater
Okay.
space.
Okay.
So it's doing two things. It's creating an awareness of theater in very young people, in primary school kids, and high school kids. And they say that if you don't get a child into a theater before the age of 10, the likelihood of their becoming to the theater ever again becomes exponentially worse the older that they get. So
True.
we are exposing them to theater, the theatrical world, but we're also exposing them to choir music as an art form in its own right
At an early
at a
age.
very early age. And the Legato Choral Festival is not just for young choirs, it is for choirs of any kind:
Okay.
church choirs, community
Okay.
choirs, adult university choirs, uh, youth and children's choirs, primary school, junior choirs, grade art choirs, senior choirs. All of those choirs are involved. And it's very important because it does exactly what it says. It creates awareness in a non-competitive environment. Now, that's important because people then say, okay, but why do you do awards? We do awards because we feel later, after we've done the festival part of the thing is completely non-competitive.
True.
You sing whatever you want.
Nice.
You sing the music you're passionate about.
Beautiful.
And it's important. But there are people who are going to consider what's happening. And then from that, we put together a group of choirs that are then nominated for specific awards in specific categories. And what that is about is recognition. Because while a non-competitive participation is really what we're all about, we also believe in recognition.
Recognizing.
You have to recognize someone's work.
And
You
when
have to
you're
recognize someone's artistry in a specific genre or in a specific level.
and that recognition motivates a person naturally.
Absolutely. Because I feel there's also no I think the classical music spectrum, the only thing that motivates people to make classical music is their passion for it.
Yes.
There's nothing else that motivates them. It's not like in theater there's an Naledi Award. That's not why we do it. That's not why we create
No.
it. But that's not why we create art. But getting recognition for something that's taken a lot out of you, even if you didn't do it for the recognition, especially if you didn't do it for the recognition, that is worth gold.
Yes. In fact,
Any actor who's won an Oscar will tell you that.
no. Chris, you spoke about knowing your audience,
Yes.
and you can't know external people before you know who you are.
Yes.
So
Self knowledge is important beyond anything.
because if you don't know who you are, you're gonna be a waving flag.
Yes.
Whoever says you are like this, you lean towards that
Yes.
direction. When they say you are like this, you lean. Okay, no. In fact, that is quite profound. That is quite profound. In fact, it's something. It's a food for thought that says we need not to compete, but we need to recognize each other
Yes.
and accept each other.
The recognition is all that it is. And we want to recognize more diverse choirs. I mean, last year we heard some of the most incredible choirs, this year as well. But last year, I have never heard African traditional music performed like this. Ever. And I've heard African traditional choirs since I was a child. Everything from a grade 2 white kid choir singing, doing their best, to a really exceptional community choir from the townships doing the most incredible work. This choir that impressed me beyond anything else is Duduza's Serenade. And
Yeah.
I was flabbergasted because they turned Hamilton Mutlong, who is their conductor, takes these songs and writes them himself in a style that is both African traditional and jazz and classical all at the same time. And it's so well rehearsed and it's so well sung. The singing is incredibly controlled.
There's precision there.
It's precision
And
on a
it's
level that I've never experienced in that context. In the same way that someone like Franku is precise with how he conducts Vox Choir, and Sabelo is precise in the way that he conducts something by Bruckner. So, yes, that was incredible. And that is the kind of thing we need more of. We need more of that sort of, we need a broader audience for choir. And the only way to build a broader audience is to bring in different audiences.
yes. And it's more like we're saying, let's together everyone achieves more.
Yes.
Because what's the point of owning 100% of a 10 rand worth company, or at least you
Yes.
can own a 10% of a 100,000,
Yes, exactly.
and then
Exactly.
you share the dividends with everyone.
Exactly.
So with the conversation that I'm having with you, I don't want to conclude, but let me ask you: would you motivate people to kids, young kids, to take music professionally?
Yes, I would. I would. Um, it is not an easy path to choose. Um, and the reason I motivate them to do it is because if that fire is inside you, very little, there's almost nothing that can extinguish that. So, being an artist of any kind is hard. It's something you almost don't choose. You can choose to put out that fire, which is very difficult because it's never really going to go away, or you can acknowledge it. And also, I don't think it's the same level in everyone. Some people have to devote everything to it. Some people enjoy it, but they don't want to devote everything to it because other parts of their lives are as important. It's not an either or thing. Even if you're a young child or you're at school and you want to, if you feel an artistic need to express yourself, do it.
Mm-hmm.
It's never going to be something you regret. Never. Because there will always be something you can learn from it. And whether you learn that this is what you want to do for the rest of your life, or you learn how to think more laterally, or you learn how to think with more intention, or how to listen better, or how to express yourself better physically, it's always going to be a good thing to do. It's never a bad thing. I'm not saying it's an easy career. It is not.
No. I don't think any career is easy. I don't think any career
No.
is easy. But like we had indicated that initially it was passion driven,
Yes.
but now you realize that every day people are making a career out of it.
Yeah.
And obviously change is going to be, it's a transition that not everyone is willing to accept. So that was the specific reason I was asking you that, do you think we should have more artists? Because we had a minister
Yes.
that said the art must not be produced anymore, and I was like, did you really say that?
I feel that was a very sweeping statement. I'm not sure I could say that it was caught in an off guard moment. I don't think that's true. What I do feel about that is that it's not true. Art needs to be produced for as long as people
And
are
it
on
must
this
be
earth,
preserved.
because it's been produced for as long as we've existed. I think art is a continuous process of exploration. And without that, the human race is very dangerously in need of reevaluation, because we don't, without the art, without that expression, without creating something better and newer and all of that, you don't have people who challenge you. It's very dangerous to take an artistic group and say, "I'm sorry, no, I'm not interested. anymore, because that's the kind of thinking that leads to
Depression, sadness,
depression. I mean,
sadness.
let's just say this: if you are sad, what are you gonna do?
Play
You have
music,
two choices: you can drink,
which is a
or
sport.
you could watch a movie, or look at a piece of art, or make some music, or listen to some music. Even if you don't create the art yourself, listening to music
Because you
has a scientifically verifiable effect on your body, and not just recorded music, live music. Because what singers, what artists, what violinists and pianists and all of those instrumentalists do is they're tapping into a specific frequency that resonates within your body, whether you know it or not. And there are healing properties in music. There are healing properties in art. There are healing properties in visual art now. There are films that have been proven to help people understand their emotions better. There's a movie called Inside Out that Disney Pixar produced a few years ago, and it is remains to this day one of the best movies about a young person's feelings. There are psychologists who use it as a reference point because it's so well conceived in how to manage your feelings, how to understand your feelings. And without feelings, what are we? Nothing.
Robots.
We're robots.
Robots.
So feelings and art are intertwined, and without art, you cannot explore your feelings,
And you can't feel.
and you can't feel.
Okay. Probably twice.
Very intense.
You see, and I thought that we're gonna have a lovely conversation.
And we
I'm,
are.
I'm even like, should we get another cup of coffee, or maybe?
What I do want to say is that I'm just very passionate about music, and I'm passionate about fine art as well. But I don't get to do it as much as I want to.
Okay. Do you have an artist? Do you have a manager?
Do I have a manager?
An
No,
artist
I
manager.
don't have an artist manager, but I'd like one.
No, I'm asking. I'm asking because remember when you're an artist, you. I don't want to say you're abstract, but you focus more on producing what you're producing.
Yes.
And then there's the management aspect of things, whereby I'll call you to come and perform it. Okay, let's put it this way. When I see you, I'm like, oh, Chris, it's a good thing you're here. Can you sing for us? Can I do that to the doctor? Ah, doctor, now that you are here, I feel like I've got a pain in my neck. I can't do that to the doctor.
No.
Why am I doing it to the artist?
I think it's got a lot to do with how people want art, but they don't like to spend money on art
Why?
because they don't see it. What's not
They don't see it as a profession.
No, no, no. I don't even say that. I don't even think people think that way about it. I think most people who aren't themselves artists have now got such an easy access. It didn't always used to be like this. It didn't always used to be like this. We have now such easy access to beautiful things. We have such easy access to art. If you want some form of art, whether it be a television program, a movie, or a piece of music, or an image, you can go on the internet and Google what you want, and you can find it. You can go to Netflix, you can watch a movie. You can go to Spotify and listen to a track. This was not always possible. There was much more effort involved, much more money involved. And I think technology, while making art more accessible, has made it less valuable in a way, at least in people's minds, because it's so easily accessible. And I think back in the 19th century, even though artists weren't well paid, if you were a clever business person and an artist, you could be very rich. And really, there was this artist in the late 19th century, early 20th century called John Singer Sargent, a very successful portrait painter. He was brilliant. He would sit down with these rich people and they'd pay him a lot of money, and in a day, he would paint a full oil painting and very few brushstrokes, but it would look exactly like that person. You can go Google him. And he was very rich because he knew how to market himself, but he was also exceptionally talented. Not all artists had that. Um, yeah, I think the role of an artist has developed so much over time, uh, and unfortunately, it's sort of expected of artists to make art, and paying them is an option
And be
because
humble
it's not necessary.
and be humble about it.
Yeah, we have to be humble about it. So the thing is, people think of some things as necessary: food, water, clothing, a house to live in. Some sort of thing to protect you from the external factors of the world. Those are essential, but
Basic
people
needs.
still don't see art as an essential thing because we are now it's now so easily accessible, and also because even more and more and more in our society we are disconnected from each other. We are disconnected from nature, and that sort of makes you less aware of your feelings. People can chop off their feelings quite easily. What art is there to do is confront you with a hard reality and maybe an uncomfortable feeling. And people don't always want that. And that's why I think it's one of the many factors why I think people think art isn't worth paying
Critical.
for.
Yeah, no. In fact, no, no. You see, you're gonna evoke emotions that I do not want, and we don't. You didn't even sing for us, whereby we can say you can calm us down after such an intense conversation. But it's true that we have been distanced from our emotion, because the minute you start expressing yourself, you will be labeled.
Oh yeah.
You are what do they what there's a word that you are triggering me, you are this, you are that, and then, like, I'm telling you what I do not like, that you, because
Yeah.
people like gaslighting each other, and
Yeah. I think there's a very big difference between being honest and being cruel. And I think that's a line that people struggle to hit. And some people expect cruelty, so they say, "You're triggering me." Even though you're not, you're just being honest. But I think the key here is that artists are not supposed to apologize. Artists shouldn't apologize.
apologize and stay
Do
humble.
do what you do, and if it's controversial and pushes the wrong buttons, you're gonna have to
So
just stand by it. You're gonna
Nizomara,
have to just stand by it. But unfortunately, being an artist is also being sort of an outsider.
yeah,
Artists are never insiders, and even the artists who are insiders are not insiders. They're outsiders.
and they are fragmented within
Yes.
the
I
artistic
think
space.
that's exactly what you're saying. That's the key here. Art as a whole is being an outsider. So when you are in it together, it's hard to trust each other on some levels. However, it is possible with dialogue and honest conversation. Honest conversation without cruelty. Because I think the problem is cruelty. People find it too easy to be cruel. And that is not a huge that's something that we could all work on. Anything you say, whether it's something that's going to be upsetting or positive or uplifting, do it with kindness. Do it with kindness, and all of a sudden you change the conversation.
Chris, let me. I don't know. It it doesn't frequently happen that I'm speechless, but you just cut my tongue. You just cut my tongue, because when you say something, they say you're rude. When you don't say something, they say you have an agenda. When, but at the end of the day, when you are sitting down alone, you realize this person was just kind to me, and then they come back later on and like, hey, how are you doing? And they forget what transpired before, and you have to be nice because you are a kind person generally. Chris, I had a very, very, very um enlightening time with you, and it's always interesting. And I always say when I'm sitting with guests, they're like, the time flies, and I'm not sure it's because we're having fun, but I feel like the time flies because we like there's a lot that we want to talk about, but we can't really talk about everything because
I have one last thing I'd like to say.
Thank you.
This weekend, I have the great privilege of singing opera for the first time in a while, and I'm singing with Josie Opera at Northwood's house at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. That is on the 28th of June.
28th
Yes,
of June.
the 29th of June.
29th of June.
29th of June.
So what
sorry.
will you be singing there?
Well, Josie
No,
Opera
I'm not
is-
expecting you to answer. I'm expecting you to give me a note.
Girl, I haven't warmed up here.
Oh, this guy.
We are singing extracts from opera scenes.
Okay.
So there's a scene from L'Elisir d'Amore, there's a scene from La Cenerentola, there's a scene from La Bohème. That is one of the most beautiful things I've ever heard in my life.
Okay.
The beautiful soprano Zintle Sucha, I think that's how you pronounce her name. My brain just stopped working. She is the most wonderful Mimi you've heard in your life. I mean, I was sitting in rehearsal and started crying. It was really beautiful. So that is a great concert that if you're interested in music, in art, go and see it. It's at Northwood's house in Parkhurst on the 29th of June at 3 o'clock.
All right. It was lovely to have you.
It was lovely to be here. Thanks
All
for
right.
having me.
All right. Igama lam ndinguzima Sasixhaso and I'm better known as Zim6. Thank you very much for your time.